The description here is input devices which are used to feed data and instructions into a computer. Storage devices are used to store data. Output devices are used to provide the information processed with the input data. Accordingly, input storage and output devices are called peripheral devices. So we have an image here, and it's titled Figure 1.3 Computer Peripheral Devices. So we have a tower, there's an optical disc there, a flash drive, a hard disk, and arrows going outward from the tower to the monitor display, speakers, mouse, keyboard, printer, microphone. So basically, input devices, output devices, storage, altogether are called peripheral devices. The peripheral devices shown in figure 1.3 above are classified in table 1.2 as input, output and storage. So we have the table 1.2 peripheral devices listed out, and you have the table headings input, output and storage. So let's look at the input part. Keyboard, mouse, microphone. So these are keyboard, mouse and microphone are input devices. Then output, they've used a pink color there, monitor, printer, speaker. So the output devices are monitor, printer and the speaker. And here at the bottom, beneath both input and output, you have the touch screen, and there is a note. The touch screen can be used to input data as well as to display information. Hence it can be used as an input and output device. So that's important. Some peripheral devices can be used for input and output both. Then we have storage. There is the hard disk drive, optical disk drive, flash drive, magnetic tape. Here we have the optical disk, hard disk drive and the flash drive. The magnetic tape drive isn't displayed here, but it's another type of storage device. You could do a Google search and look at the type of magnetic tape drives that are there. Go to the browser and type magnetic tape drive, and then this is a magnetic tape and this is the magnetic tape drive. There are different kinds which you can see are available. Then we come to activity 1.2 in your workbook. So if you could take your workbook out and go to the activity 1.2, which is on page 2. This is the activity that we are supposed to do together with that part of the lesson in the reading book. Name the peripheral devices in the image below. Use the number for the expressions given in the list. So basically, one monitor, that would be this. The printer, that would be number 2. The printer would be number 2. Number 3 is the keyboard. Number 4, headphone, that would be this. Number 5 is the scanner, and that is the scanner listed there. Number 6 is the speaker. There are 2 speakers noted there, one with the arrow pointed to it. Number 7 is the mouse. Everyone knows what the mouse looks like. And number 8, the last one, is the webcam camera, or rather web camera. We call it a webcam. So that's an easy activity for you to do. See if you got everything correct in the first go. If not, try again. Then we come to the topic 1.4, computer specifications. What are computer specifications? Before purchasing an item, it is important to be aware of the value and the quality of the item. Specifications are generally about the common features of an item. So basically, what's being conveyed here is that before you buy anything, you're going to look at the value and the quality of that item. Specifications are generally about the common features of an item. So the common features of that item are going to be called specifications. For example, length, width, and paper thickness, etc. determine quality of an exercise book. Basic specifications for an exercise book are as shown. For example, length, width, and paper thickness, etc. determine quality of an exercise book. So, the length, the width, and the paper thickness are specifications that determine the quality of an exercise book. Basic specifications for an exercise book are as shown. So the length, 210 millimeters, width 148 millimeters, number of pages 40, thickness of paper 60 GSM. On a side note, when you take a piece, say a half sheet or a cardboard, the thickness of that paper is measured with something called GSM. So the thickness of the paper in this exercise book is measured at 60 GSM, and the type of book is a single ruled book. Similar to the specifications of a book, a computer also has its own specification. We go to the next page and it says specifications to suit different user requirements. Consider a situation where two students use two types of books for different purposes. For example, a square-ruled exercise book for mathematics and a large-size drawing book for art. Specifications for the two types mentioned above are as follows. So there they list out the two specifications, one for the exercise book and one for the drawing book. So the maths book would be length 210 millimeters, width 148 millimeters, number of pages 200, thickness of paper 60 GSM, and type square ruled because it's going to be used as a mathematics exercise book. Now for the drawing book, the length you can see is 300 millimeter. The length is greater than with the smaller square ruled exercise book. The width also is higher at 210 millimeters, but the number of pages are less and the thickness of paper is higher at 70 GSM, and there the type is listed as blank because there are no square ruled or single ruled pages in a drawing book. Different specifications for different purposes may result in price differences as well. This is important. So, when a product has different specifications to other products, there would be price differences. So, the specifications change according to user requirements in the above example. Similarly, depending on the use of a computer and its specifications also differs. So, what is being conveyed here is that, like with other things where specifications change according to use requirements, as shown in the example here, the use of a computer, depending on the use of computer, its specifications also differs. Then we come to lesson 1.5. Specifications of computers and peripheral devices. The following shows some important factors of computer specifications. Important. The bubble says one can generally assure the quality of an item through its specifications. So what does that mean? The quality of a computer can be assured or assessed through its specifications. Okay, so 1.5.1, the processor. Humans are considered the most intelligent among all living beings. The brain, figure 1.4, helps man to make decisions for actions taken. The brain also has the ability to swiftly respond to all sensations. So we have the image of a human brain, and there is a description about the human brain given here. As we move on to the next page, it says, much as the brain is most important for humans, the processor, Central Processing Unit, or CPU for short, is the most important part of a computer. The processor processes data swiftly. As such, the processor is considered the brain of the computer. So, the two images given below show the side that connects to the motherboard. This is the bottom part, and the view from above. And as you can see, the CPU is an Intel processor, which is 4th generation Intel Core i7. i7 processors are generally better compared to i3 or i5 processors, and are more expensive, and are also better at processing than the lower tier processors. Speed of the processor. A machine functions at a slower speed, takes a longer time to complete a task, while a machine functions at a higher speed, takes a shorter or lesser time to complete a task. Therefore, the amounts of work that could be carried out using these machines during a unit time differs. So, here we have an image to explain what is mentioned here. A machine functions at a slower speed. Takes a longer time to complete a task, while a machine functions at a higher speed takes a short or lesser time. So there is one blender which can take a basket of fruit and give out 3 fruit drinks, and it is noted as a blender working at slower speed. Then we have another image of another blender, a red one, with 3 fruit baskets giving out more fruit drinks, uh, identified as a blender working at higher speed. So coming back to what I said, uh, the difference between the processors. Now this could be an i3, Intel i3 processor, and this could be an i7 processor. So on the next page it says figure 1.6 shows 2 blenders working simultaneously. The blender working at higher speed processes a large quantity of fruit juice per unit time. A machine working at a higher speed provides better results. So basically these two are giving this output taking the same amount of time. The input is the fruit basket for the first blender and 3 fruit baskets for the second blender, and the output, resulting output, which is given simultaneously, is greater with the better blender. The performance of a computer depends on the speed of the processor. A processor running at high speed is able to process more data during a unit time. So basically, if you take the example of the blender and compare it to that of a computer, the computer depends on the speed of the processor. The computer's performance depends on the speed of the processor. A processor running at high speed is able to process more data during a unit time. So basically, if you look at the red blender, that is a processor running at high speed which is able to process more data, if you look at that example. So that's the idea they're trying to convey. That is, the performance of a computer increases, then the software can be run faster. So when the processor is better, whatever software that you have on the PC will run faster. Therefore, when selecting a processor, it is advisable to select one with a greater speed. The speed of the processor is measured by the number of instructions executed per second. The speed of a computer is determined by the number of instructions executed per second. The speed is measured in hertz. Units such as megahertz, capital M, capital H, simple Z, that is megahertz, or gigahertz. So capital G, capital H, and simple Z is for gigahertz. And here it shows you 1000 megahertz equals 1 gigahertz. So 1000 megahertz equals 1 gigahertz. For gigahertz, There is a general term we use. We say 1 gig instead of saying the entire gigahertz. We say 1 gig. Processor manufacturers. There are several processor manufacturing companies. Apple, Intel, and AMD are some of them. Here, this is an Apple A8 chip, A8 processor. These can be found mainly on Apple devices. Intel and AMD, the Intel Core i5 is an 8th gen processor, and the AMD Athlon X2 is another type of processor. These are generally found with non-Apple devices. So if you take an HP computer or a Dell computer, chances are the processor inside might be one of these. Generally, the number of processors in a central processing unit is used to classify the central processing unit. The following table shows examples of some Intel central processing units with multiple processor units. Number of CPUs 1, type single core. Number of CPUs 2 is called a dual core. Number of CPUs 4 is called a quad core. Single, dual, and quad. So basically 1, 2, or 4 CPUs. When the number of processors in a central processing unit increases, its capacity also increases. Table 1.4 shows examples for Intel processors. Table 1.4, different processors and their names. So single core, Pentium 1, Pentium 2, Pentium 3, or Pentium 4. Dual core or Core 2 Duo. This is the type of Intel chip. And quad core, Core i3, i5, i7, i9. So coming back to what I said earlier, a Core i3 quad core processor would be cheaper than a quad core i9 processor. But the workload also that the computer can handle would increase, or the output would be greater with the i9 or the i7 quad core processor than with a single core Pentium 4 processor or a dual core Intel processor. So remember this is important. A single core or a dual core or a quad core, each would process data at different speeds, with the quad core i9 processing the fastest. Then we have a activity. Let's go to the workbook and look at activity 1.3. Right click on this PC icon and select properties to check the specifications of the processor. Okay, so if you have a Windows 10 or an earlier version of Windows, you can with Windows 10 you can you can select properties to check the specifications of that processor, and it will list the processor as Intel Core i5 5200U CPU at 2.2 gigahertz, 2.2 gigahertz. So the manufacturer is listed as Intel. CPU type is Core i5. So that would be this quad-core i5. CPU speed is 2.2 gigahertz. And the main memory installed is 4 gigabytes. The RAM is 4 gigabytes. And after that, in the workbook, they ask you to examine the process of a few computers and complete the table given below. So, if you have access to several computers, you can look at the specifications or the properties and then list them out. Otherwise, what you can do is you can visit the page of a computer seller online and look at the products that they have, and then say it's if it's an HP type of processor and the speed if you don't have access. So that way you can do this exercise. Then we come to topic 1.5.2, hard disk. The hard disk provides permanent storage space for storing data and to install all software. The hard disk is the main secondary storage device in a computer. For example, an exercise book with 160 pages provides more writing space than a book with 40 pages. Similarly, more data can be stored in a hard disk with a greater capacity. So, we have a 40-page exercise book together with a 1 terabyte hard disk and a 160-page exercise book with a 4 TB hard disk. So, you know that 1024 MB equals 1 GB. 1024 GB should equal 1 TB. So the 1 TB hard disk and the 4 TB hard disk, which one would store more data? If you thought it's the 4 TB hard disk, then you are right, because it has a higher capacity, 4 times as high as the 1 TB hard disk. So refer to the workbook for activity 1.4. We'll do this activity as well. Calculate the capacity of a hard disk. To check the hard disk capacity, double click on the icon this PC. Hard disk is shown as local disk under devices and drives. Sometimes local disk is divided into two as local disk C and D. The capacity for both are taken together to calculate the hard disk. So, in this image, there is this PC has two volumes, local disk C and the new volume D. So there are two partitions. The C drive has 457 GB and the D drive has 232 GB. So you have to add these together to get the total capacity of that hard disk. Remember though that sometimes a computer can have more than one hard disk. And they ask you to compare the hard disk capacity for several computers. So with that, we will conclude the lesson for today. And if you found this useful, give a like, share a comment, and join us again for the next lesson. Thank you.